So, welcome back to the class. And today, the topic that we are going to do is another land revenue settlement devised by the British in India, which was harsh on the peasants. And the name of this settlement or this system was Ryotwari Settlement. Ryotwari Settlement, right? So let's understand why this system has been known as Ryotwari Settlement, right? So we will pick up this particular part, the word Royat. Now the word Royat means peasant. So this entire settlement was based on the peasants. So that is why it has been termed as the Ryotwari Settlement. If you see during this particular time in North India, the Royat was named differently in different parts. One of it has been the peasants have been known as Royat, then they are known as Riaya, then they were also known as Rayat, right? All these names were given to the peasants, right? In simple Hindi term, we call them as Kisan and or the farmers in English. Now let's understand again. Come back to the same triangular ladder, which clearly explains who was part of this system. So if you see, this is a two-level system in which the bottom came the peasants. So the peasants were there, and on the top came the British. So there are only two parties involved in it. One is the British, the other one is the peasants. So if you see this system, how is this system different from the permanent settlement that we have already studied? The permanent settlement system had zamindars, right? But in this system, zamindars are out from this system. So it's been directly between peasants and the British. So peasant paid directly the tax to the British. So the what is the most important point of the system is peasants paid tax directly to the British, which was the case in the permanent settlement, wherein the peasant paid the tax to the zamindars further paid it to the British. Now we are coming on to who made the system, who made this system, right? So this system was made by a person, Captain Alexander Reed. And there is also another person who has contributed in making the system is Thomas Munro. So if you clearly see, at times Ryotwari settlement system is also known as Munro system, Munro system, Munro system or Munro settlement, right? So now we come on to the next question. Where was this introduced? So this was introduced in the areas of Madras, right? So if I see most Tamil Nadu, so if I see this entire system was focused or was introduced in the southern India. Southern Indian areas were taken for this system. So how does this system entirely work? We are coming on to that. How does the system work? So I am coming on to it. What? So what was the system? So I've already told you that the Royat paid the taxes directly to the British, eliminating the zamindars who were the intermediaries और द मिडल मैन, राइट? यानी कि जो बीच में जो थे उनको हटा दिया गया, ज़मींदार को कम्प्लीटली हटा दिया गया क्योंकि करप्शन था एंड द सिस्टम वॉज नॉट वर्किंग वेल. सो दे डिसाइडेड टू रिफॉर्म द सिस्टम एंड रिमूव ज़मींदार सो दैट दे कुड हैव वन टू वन कनेक्शन विद द पेजेंट्स एंड द पेजेंट्स हैव द कनेक्शन विद द ब्रिटिश. So what was the system? So what did the British do is British measured the land holding of the peasants and then assessed it कि कितना मेजरमेंट है, सब कुछ एसेस किया. वो लोग क्रॉप पोटेंशियल भी देखते थे कि कितना क्रॉप पोटेंशियल है. जो लैंड को एसेस किया है, कितना क्रॉप ग्रोथ होगा, कितना कल्टीवेशन के बाद मिलेगा, that entire crop potential was assessed, right? They also considered what was the actual cultivation. बोलने के लिए peasant के पास, peasant has been thinking that he will have 100% of what do you call crops grown, but because of certain conditions it might not be a very realistic thing. So वहाँ पे कम हो सकता है crop production. So वो actual cultivation कितना किया है peasant ने. Suppose the peasant had a land, most of the part was fertile and some part might be infertile, right? So those parts were to be left vacant to gain the fertility. So actual cultivation को भी देखा जाता था. एंड इस सिस्टम का मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट पार्ट है कि रॉयत जो था, रॉयत पेड द टैक्स डायरेक्टली टू द ब्रिटिश, डायरेक्टली टू द ब्रिटिश. This we have already discussed. We'll move on to the what is the revenue that was fixed. So the revenue, if you see, the revenue was 60% on irrigated lands. That means that the farmer who had irrigated land or the fertile land with irrigation facilities and all, the tax was decided to be paid at the rate of 60%. And for dry lands does not mean what do you call infertile land. Dry land basically means that the land which does not have much irrigation facility but yet it has crop potential, that is 50%. So the land were dry had to pay taxes 50%. If you see the figure 60% and 50%, it looks easy and it looks as if the tax has been not much. Now think about a condition of a peasant who has been thinking to produce 100% of crop, but because of some issue, probably the rain was not there and all, and his actual cultivation and the production was 70%. Out of this 70%, if it was a irrigated land, he had to pay 60% as tax, which gives them only 10% left with the peasant, right? And now think about in the same scenario where 70% was the actual production and it was a dry land, 50% of tax was applicable. So that makes it 20% was left with the peasant. So if you see, the tax in the system was also high. The only better or the best thing that has happened in this entire system is that zamindars are not there to zamindars are not there to zamindars are not there to what do you call exploit the peasants. So zamindars are not there to exploit the peasants, but the taxes were high. Again, there were certain conditions that were laid under the system. So if I see what was the disadvantage of the system, disadvantage of this system, disadvantages of the system was no concession was given. No concession was given during any natural calamity, being it famine, flood, lack of rain, whatever, right? So no concession was provided to the peasants. Second, if I see, in this system also there were corrupt revenue officials. So corrupt revenue officials did what? They made fake accounts of the soldiers. So they assessed, the next point I'm going to write, they assessed high value of the land. High value of the land. For example, high value of the land. For example, if a peasant was able to only produce around 60%, they showed it in their records as 90%. So the actual cultivation they increased and showed it on the 90%. Because of that, the entire burden of paying taxes fell on the peasant, right? And the most important part of this entire system was there was no appealing system. That means that whatever might have happened to the peasant, he is not able to pay the tax, he cannot appeal or ask for concession from the British. So this system was very rigid, right? It was not in favor of the peasant, but it was in favor of the British. So British introduced this system in the year 1820, right? British introduced the system in 1820 in mostly the southern part of India, as well as some parts like Bombay, Assam, etc. Right? So if I compare the system with the permanent settlement system, the system was better, but it had same problems which was there. Instead of zamindars, now the revenue officials have started doing the corruption, and the system was corrupted. High taxes were there, no concession was there, leading the peasants to commit to suicide, to sell off their whatever valuables they had, to take money from the money lender, and to being indebted. So this was all from me for this class. Take care. Bye. Have a wonderful day ahead.